Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 174. We talked a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein and his relationship with Harvey Weinstein a few shows ago. And we discussed how Jeffrey Epstein tossed Weinstein out of his apartment or home in France when Weinstein allegedly assaulted one of Epstein's favored girls. So that was pretty much the whole entire gist of the story that we heard from Bradley Edwards, at least that piece of it, as he was giving us the excerpts and a few lead-ins to his upcoming book, which releases in a few hours here in America, and I'm guessing released elsewhere already, perhaps Australia, places like that are ahead of us. It comes out March 31st, so when I get up tomorrow, I'll be able to start listening to it on Audible, which is awesome. But now we're getting a little bit more context, it looks like, here from the headline. Obviously, I haven't read the article yet. As per usual on the Daily Drop, I don't read the article until we read through it together. But from the headline, it looks like there was a little bit more to their friendship than we previously even knew. So, let's jump into the article. The article is from the Daily Mail, and the headline is How Jeffrey Epstein lured young women by introducing them to Harvey Weinstein with the promise of landing roles. But their friendship ended when the Hollywood exec tried to assault one of the billionaire pedophile's favorite girls. This article was written by Kayla Brantley. Jeffrey Epstein used his connections to disgraced Hollywood executive Harvey Weinstein to lure young girls into his sex trafficking ring with the promise of landing roles. And we saw him do the same thing, obviously, with Victoria's Secret. And he used all of his influence and all of his power and all of his friendships with these other people to enact his plans and to get things moving. Jeffrey Epstein would tell them, oh, yeah, I could hook you up. You could be a model at Victoria's Secret. Come on down to my office. Now we're learning that he was like, look, I'll get you a role in a flick. Come on, you can go down, see my boy Harvey Weinstein, and he'll get you in a movie. But he didn't tell them what would come with that, right? There's always a price to pay when you're dealing with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein. I talk about it all the time. They never do anything out of the kindness of their heart. People like this don't do anything that doesn't serve their own self-interests. They're not doing anything for altruistic reasons or because they're good people or because they have empathy for you. None of that is true. What they're looking to do is give themselves a shield with their charitable givings. Give themselves a bit of a shield with their organizations that provide money to, say, poor people or to schools and stuff like that. It's not because they care, guys like Epstein or Weinstein. It's so when they get in trouble in situations like these, they can fall back and they have built-in barriers and excuses for the people that are protecting them. Oh, well, how could you possibly believe this girl who is, she's a towel girl over this mogul? When in reality, everybody who's paying attention knows that all of these people that are hanging out together are sick and they're all fellow travelers, and at the very least, they're all enablers and they look the other way. But these people don't care. They don't care about any of that. All they want to do, all they care about is consolidation of power and more money and, the usuals for people like this. It has nothing to do with they're good people or they're going to, they feel like there's a cause and they want to help. It's never that with them. There's always an ulterior motive. There's always another level to what they have going on. So I don't take anything that happens with the so-called elite at face value anymore, especially since I've been looking into this case. This case has thrown everything on its head for me, and I try and look deeper now with everything. I don't take anything at face value when it comes to these billionaires and these so-called people who give to charity, a bunch of money to charity, because every single time you look into one of these people, it seems like there's all kinds of darkness surrounding them. So I'm very skeptical of people like this. According to the Daily Beast, Epstein would flout his Hollywood ties to impress women, introducing them to rapist Weinstein, and even helped then 21-year-old Shantae Davies book a small role in a 2005 horror film produced by a Weinstein-owned company. And again, you see the ties, and they're thin strands, right? They're not, these like the ties that you would say with Epstein and say Jean-Luc Brunel. But what it does, it shows you that these people that were hanging out in high society in New York and LA and other places, but mainly New York, they all knew what was up, and there wasn't just one person like this running around. I wonder how many people are running around in high society and so-called polite society still that are like these people that nobody knows about them. But they still are sick and they're still involved in all of this kind of madness, and who knows at this point? Who knows at this point? All I can say is what we have seen when we've pulled the curtain back and taken a glimpse into the way these people conduct themselves and the way they live. Well, it's nothing to look up to. It's nothing to aspire to. I certainly would never conduct myself that way. I don't care if I had all the money in the world. I would never conduct myself in the manner these people conduct themselves in. They should be ashamed of themselves, and I'm talking about all of them from the top down. Everybody that ran in a circle with this guy, everybody that hung out with this guy, everybody that was palling around with this guy, especially after the arrest, you should be ashamed of yourselves. But the relationship between the two sexual predators soured when Epstein accused Weinstein of attempting to sexually assault one of his favorite girls. This is like John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer meeting up and having a fight in some sort of fantasy novel, some sort of crazy what-if novel. I mean, these two guys hanging out together, talk about an absolute horror story. Can you imagine these two psychopaths, these two sickos running around together? Ay. Davy says she was a massage therapy student in California when she was recruited into Epstein's trafficking ring in 2001. She claims she was sexually abused by the billionaire before she escaped in 2005. Pedophile. Her attorney, Brad Edwards, confirmed that Epstein introduced Davies to Weinstein, which got her an audition for the 2005 horror film Feast, and then the role as drunk girl. Imagine, oh yeah, I'll get you in this movie. Sexually abuses her, treats her like, you can only imagine how horribly she was treated at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. And then he gets her a role, and her title is Drunk Girl. That's the role she's playing. Jeffrey Epstein was just such a deceitful, sick man, and he should have been stopped so much longer ago than he was. He should have been stopped so many more years previously than he was. And it bothers me so much that the people in power ignored it. And the same pattern we see play over and over with people like this. Weinstein had all the money in the world, there's no doubt, and his money gave him cover for so long. But eventually that cover ran out for Weinstein. With Epstein, that cover never ran out. You notice the difference in jail sentencing, right? Weinstein, 23 years right off the bat. Epstein, 13 months on his first arrest. And you know why, in my opinion, that occurred. I'm very clear by what I think happened, and with all the evidence we have, the abundance of evidence, it's hard to dispute the fact that Epstein got off light because people in places of power within the United States government pulled strings to make sure that Epstein got a lighter sentence because of the secrets he held, because of the operation he was running. The material that he had in his possession was a lot more explosive than what Weinstein can provide. Weinstein was a sick son of a bitch, but he wasn't running a whole trafficking operation the same way Epstein was. Does that lessen the crimes of Weinstein? Hell no. He's a sick-ass predator, and in my opinion, deserves life in prison, not 23 years. I mean, I know it's pretty much a life sentence, but they should have sent a message and gave that sick bastard a life sentence. Right away, bang, send the message. People like you have no chance of ever getting out of jail, no matter what. But Epstein, 13 months, work release, compare the two. And Weinstein had just as much money as Epstein, if not more, but what he didn't have is he didn't have the usefulness to the people in the different chambers of power that are in charge of running these sort of operations. Edward said Jeffrey introduced her to Harvey, and that connection is what led to her getting that audition. Feast was produced by Dimension Films, an independent branch of Weinstein Miramax. Dimension was run by Weinstein's brother, Bob Weinstein. Edwards, who has represented Epstein's victims for over a decade, has elaborated on the relationship between the two convicted sex offenders in his new book, In Relentless Pursuit, out March 31st. In it, he reveals that the friendship came to an end when Epstein accused Weinstein of trying to sexually assault one of his favorite girls at Epstein's home in France. And this is what we talked about earlier. We learned that they had their falling out in France over Weinstein allegedly assaulting one of Jeffrey Epstein's faves. And they had the falling out, which led to Epstein throwing Weinstein out, calling him a pig, etc., etc. So we heard this story earlier from Brad Edwards, and we know that they had this falling out according to numerous sources at this point. Edwards writes, I heard various versions of this story from others, including years later from Epstein himself, who referred to Harvey as a pig. Imagine that. Yeah, that is pretty crazy, right? Imagine the irony in that. Jeffrey Epstein referring to somebody else as a pig. What sort of vile, filthy excuse for a human being do you have to be for Jeffrey Epstein, who is the lowest form of scum maybe in history, for that man to think that you're a pig? What sort of disgusting animal must you be for that to occur? Weinstein was at Epstein's apartment in France receiving a massage from one of Epstein's girls when he attempted to aggressively convert the massage into something sexual. The girl rejected his advances. As the story goes, Harvey then verbally abused her for rejecting him. Of course he did. These guys thought and think they could do whatever they want, that they could treat people however they want, that their money is enough for them to treat you, me, or anyone else they come in contact with in whatever manner they see fitting. And what's happening now is they're learning, and they're learning real quickly, that ship has sailed. That party, it's over. We're the common man and woman around the world, the middle class people, the working class around the world, is no longer going to be abused by these people. We're no longer going to sit back while they run trafficking rings right under our noses. I mean, when's enough? When does the straw break the camel's back? I've talked about it previously. We expect them to steal. We expect them to lie. We even expect them to get involved in all kinds of crazy conflicts around the world. That's just par for the course. But human trafficking, the trafficking of children, we're not going to step up and talk about that. We're going to turn the other cheek when something like that's occurring. Nah, sorry. I'm not doing that. I'm not standing by and turning the other cheek, especially when I can see exactly what's occurring and I can see how it unfolded. Nah, no way. I'm not sitting that one out. Sorry, folks. Little did Harvey know this was one of Epstein's favorite girls at the time, and Jeffrey viewed the aggressive mistreatment as disrespectful to him. And again, I'm not a psychologist, right? I've said that as well. But it's interesting to see how Epstein looked at it. He looked at the girl as if she was his property. So when Weinstein was disrespectful to his property, really that is an extension of Jeffrey Epstein. So Weinstein was being disrespectful to Epstein, and Epstein's ego could not deal with that. It couldn't take it. So he had to act, and he had to show Weinstein who the alpha was in the predatory circle. And so he tossed Weinstein out. Jeffrey then came into the room, got in Harvey's face, and kicked him out of his house, delivering the message that he was never to come back. Epstein and Weinstein had the same high-profile connections, including President Bill Clinton and publicist Peggy Siegel. They were also part of the same investor group. If you notice, the Daily Mail has been mentioning Bill Clinton a lot more lately, and I've been pining for that. I think it's a good idea. I think Bill Clinton's a very important part of this story, and I think that he has to be mentioned when it comes to stuff like this. We can't be talking about Paul Prosperi, and we can't be talking about Doug Band, and we can't be talking about Weinstein, and even Epstein himself, if we're not going to mention Clinton and the friendship Clinton had with these people. And we're not just talking friendship in passing. We're talking millions of dollars was funneled into the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Foundation, the election campaigns, you name it. Millions, and I mean millions, was funneled into these organizations. And it's important that they answer for that. It's important that there's transparency. Because these are the links, folks, that direct us to the highest levels of power. And it's not just Bill Clinton. We have leaders from all over the world. Ehud Barak. We have ties with the royals in England. We know that Epstein was tight with the royal family in Saudi Arabia. We have the Austrian passport. So this is not just an American problem, although I'm on record saying, in my opinion, if there was any sort of blackmail operation being run, if there was any sort of intelligence operation being run, and it was being run in America, there's zero chance that the CIA wasn't onto it, that the CIA wasn't in a leadership role, because nothing is happening like that in America without Big Brother CIA knowing everything about it. But it's very important that we stress the fact that Bill Clinton has a role to play in this, that Bill Clinton was a very good friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. And while nobody has come out and said that Bill Clinton was involved in abusing any girls, I want to be very clear about that. I want to be very clear that there's no one has said that. None of these girls that were involved with Epstein anyway has come out and said that. So when I say that Bill Clinton plays an important part here, the important part is he was one of the main vehicles used by Jeffrey Epstein for him to have credibility, for Epstein to have credibility, for Epstein to be accepted in these circles. So Bill Clinton definitely needs to sit down and he needs to talk with the authorities about what he knew. And again, I'm not saying Bill Clinton was involved in any abuse, because there's no mention of that, right? And I don't do that here on the podcast. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate and say, oh yeah, definitely Bill Clinton was definitely in on it, but I have nothing to back that up with. That's not my MO. That's not how I conduct myself. I'm very thorough about these things, and I try to mention only people that are being credibly accused of being directly involved, or those that have been named as co-conspirators along the way. And then we have the other layer, which I always refer to as the enablers, right? And I always make sure to refer to people, oh, this is an enabler, and this is somebody who's directly implicated in the abuse. So there's many layers to this case. And Bill Clinton falls firmly in the layer where he was an enabler and somebody that was used as a treasure piece, and obviously somebody very, very close to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the picture on the wall, that's not enough for you. The millions of dollars, that's not enough for you. The invite to the wedding, that's not enough for you. I mean, come on. It's very obvious how close these guys were. Epstein's alleged madam, co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, also ran in the same circles as Weinstein, attending his parties and premiere for years. Of course she was. What, you don't think that Weinstein had an in with the mega group? You don't think Weinstein had an in with Wexner and all these people weren't connected? Of course they are. Of course they are. That doesn't make any of those people complicit in what Weinstein was doing, but to think that they weren't running around in the same circles is naive at best. From my point of view, I can tell you that Ghislaine and Epstein viewed Hollywood and the movies as a way into power society. New York publicist R. Corey Hay told the Daily Beast. Epstein collected people, including movie stars like Woody Allen. Well, I don't doubt the Woody Allen angle. We all know the story about that guy, right? We all know Woody Allen isn't the biggest straight shooter or somebody that is without his own skeletons in the closet. So why would we be shocked that Woody Allen would be hanging out with Epstein or would be hanging out with Weinstein? Fellow travelers and all, right? It wouldn't surprise me if Weinstein and Epstein felt a kinship through their immoral character traits and that they had some immediate symbiotic relationship because of their evil ways, Hay added. Absolutely correct. 100%. That's a very good assertion and it's very possible. Guys like this, they meet up at parties, they start to talk. They're people, because remember, they have cadres of people that handle things for them. Before you go and speak to the emperor, you have to get through, his advisors. And for these mega rich people, it's no different. The core four, Ghislaine, there's a whole process. But once they got together and they started BSing and they started rapping and they realized that they were fellow travelers and kindred spirits, well, can you imagine the damage these two could have done together? The things that they could have accomplished in the world of human trafficking or in abusing girls? We're talking about very powerful people here, folks. We're talking very powerful. How long did Weinstein get away with it? We don't even got to talk about Epstein. We know how long he got away with it, and we know why he got away with it, but look at how long Weinstein got away with it. He didn't have the protection that Epstein had, that's for sure, but he got away with it for a long-ass time anyway. Another insider who was a friend of Maxwell and is remaining anonymous told the Daily Beast, "The Jeffreys of the world are the kind of people Harvey liked in his orbit. If he saw power and or influence, all of that was very appealing to Harvey. Same with Epstein." So they were trying to outscum each other, right? Who could be the more parasitic symbiote in the relationship? And it's a close race, but I think Epstein out-scumbags Weinstein by just a hair. Davies, now 40, was witness to Epstein's high-powered connections on a 2002 humanitarian trip to Africa with Epstein, President Bill Clinton, and actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker on board Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express. I wonder what Larry Visosky has to say about that flight. She previously said she was hesitant about traveling so far from home with Epstein, who she accused of raping and sexually assaulting her on other trips, including at his private island in the Caribbean. However, she says she was not sexually assaulted on this journey. When Davies arrived at the airfield for the trip, she said a man handed pilot uniforms to her and 3 other assistants to wear on board to look professional as they waited for Epstein and Maxwell's arrival. So they were told to dress up as flight attendants. And I wonder, she was handed, a man handed pilot uniforms to her. Who was that man? I wonder if it was Larry Visosky. He was the pilot of the plane, so he was in charge of the plane. That makes him in charge of the cabin crew, correct? I don't know if that was the case, if he's, the one who gave her the outfit, but I would think he is, right? He was the one who flew that plane. Pretty interesting. Wonder if we'll ever be able to get an answer to that. Davies described being shocked when she saw the A-listers that would be traveling with her. "I jumped out of my seat and was immediately aware that my travel mates had arrived, and in walks Bill Clinton," she told The Sun. "He continued to walk onto the plane, introducing himself. I thought him to be charming and sweet." And that's important, right? She didn't say he abused her, he wasn't rude to her, he wasn't sexually suggestive, he was charming and sweet. So we can only go by what the survivors tell us about the way Clinton conducted himself in their presence. So that's the template we're going to use here on the podcast until something changes. Now, you can discuss Bill Clinton's other behavior in other situations, obviously, but in context of what we're discussing here, I'm not going to get off topic and digress into some other area. That's for another conversation at another time. For what we're talking about in this conversation, Bill Clinton, while he enabled Jeffrey Epstein, does not have seemed to be involved in any sort of criminalistic behavior as far as assaulting anyone goes. More of the guests arrived, and somehow, as the plane closed its doors, I stood looking around the room at all the new faces I just met. Chris Tucker, Kevin Spacey, and Bill, accompanied, also, of course, by the Secret Service. I was going to Africa with the most eclectic group of people imaginable. Davies said it's clear that Epstein was using his private jet and wealth to get close to rich and powerful people. Yeah, I agree with that. That's definitely part of it. But it was the other goodies that Epstein offered that really got these people close. They could have all afforded to get their own jet. They could have chartered their own jet, any one of those guys. But it was what came along with that jet and the things that, Epstein offered his friends in the way of the sex trafficking ring, that was what really enticed these people for the most part. Now, again, she's not saying that happened on this trip, but on this plane, and part of the package was the incentive of these young girls. Epstein was arrested on July 6th and pleaded not guilty to federal charges of sex trafficking involving dozens of girls as young as 14. He was found dead on August 10th in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, and an autopsy concluded that he hanged himself, allegedly. Meanwhile, Harvey Weinstein is serving 23 years behind bars after being found guilty of rape and sexual assault. Weinstein, 68, has reportedly tested positive for coronavirus and is being isolated at Wend Correctional Facility in western New York. Weinstein is said to have told prison staff he believed he has the virus when he had the virus when he entered the state prison system last weekend from notorious Rikers Island, where a number of inmates have the virus. Aw, boo-hoo, Harvey. Boo-hoo. Poor Harvey's sick. He has the virus. Wah. I don't wish the COVID-19 on anybody, honestly. Look, I'm not that kind of person, but I don't feel sorry for Weinstein for 1 second. You're going to have to tough it out like anybody else has to tough it out who's in prison, buddy. You did the crime. You have to do the time. I have no empathy for you. You're a rapist. You're an abuser. And you're a man who wielded incredible power and used that power to snuff out the innocence of many, many, many women. And for you to think people should feel sorry for you or people should have empathy for you, well, I think you're going to have another thing coming. And as far as the system goes, they should just put him in a cell by himself and let him ride it out like everybody else is doing at home. What, he got special treatment than some guy that's, quarantined in his apartment in Manhattan right now? Or the guy that's hanging out in Michigan who can't leave his house, he has to stay home. What's the difference? Put this guy in his jail cell, give him his 3 hots in his cot, and let him ride it out like everybody else. If he gets to the point where he needs to go get on a ventilator and intubated, then, the prison has to, decide what they have to do medically at that point. But until he gets to that point, that mofo could sit in his jail cell like everybody else sitting at their house, and he could self-quarantine, read some books, whatever it is sick people like him do, and ride this bad boy out, because no special treatment for this guy. I don't care what happens. I don't care if an asteroid's about to hit the Earth. No special treatment for people like Weinstein ever. So we know that Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein ran in the same circles. We know that they had the same kind of friends, and we know that they had a falling out. But there are so many other people out there like these two that are still running around in the same circles and with the same people and the same MO. And it's just an ongoing problem. And they feel emboldened. They see that Epstein's got away with it for so long, and his co-conspirators, nothing even happened to them. So what would make them want to stop? What would motivate them to not be involved in crimes like this? Nothing. Now you start throwing RICO charges at people. You start hitting people with RICO charges, and it'll make the 23 years that Weinstein got look like easy time, like short time. Because when you start dropping RICO charges on people, you start looking like Gas Pipe Casso. You start looking like how John Gotti looked when he finally went to prison. Insert any one of these mafia guys here, and you're looking at 40, 50 years for RICO charges. Never mind human trafficking RICO charges on top of that with the money laundering in the pursuit of criminal means within a criminal enterprise with other people involved. Oh, this is a dream RICO case for the feds if it was a criminal organization. If it was, the mafia or a cartel, they'd be all over this. This whole ring would be busted out already. But for some reason, Jeffrey Epstein's people are still walking around. At least we can take heart in the fact, folks, that a guy like Weinstein's going to rot in prison. It's progress. There's no doubt about it. It is definitely progress. And if Weinstein can rot in prison, why not Ghislaine? Why not Kellen? Why not Leslie Groff? Why not Adriana Ross? Why not Prince Andrew? If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. You'll also be able to find the link for my newest podcast, COVID-19, The Pandemic That Changed Everything, Episode 1, within the description box. Episode 2 will be coming out this week sometime. I'm aiming for Thursday. So look for that. I'll let you all know when it's produced and ready to go. But until then, I will talk to you all later, and I hope you all have a fantastic night.